We get the honor of welcoming Meredith Root and Alex Parker to the Athletes Podcast today for the 138th episode of the show. And I'm super honored to be able to have conversations with both of these incredible individuals. Meredith, a 2018 CrossFit Games individual athlete and also biological engineer, no big deal, as well as Alex Parker, a 2015 CrossFit Games individual athlete who's got a bachelor's degree in psychology and is also a lawyer. So a pretty dynamic duo, to say the least. Thank you so much to both of you for coming on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having us.
I'm curious, and I want to start off right here because you guys have Tactic Nutrition. You've got this incredible platform that's blown up over the past couple of weeks. Your latest podcast talked about it going from like 20,000 followers on Instagram to over 150. And you've been able to impact so many lives along the way. And I would love for you two both just to start by introducing yourselves, who you are, and what got you both on this journey of nutrition, health, and wellness.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So I'm Meredith, and what got me started in nutrition? I guess that goes kind of way back. So my background is in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. That's my education, and I worked in biopharmaceutical, like biotechnology research and development for many years. So about 6 years. I'm older than people think I am. So I had a whole career before I started dabbling in fitness full time. And I, at that time, was working in North Carolina, doing research and development on basically recombinant DNA products. So mammalian cell culture producing monoclonal antibodies. And I was working at the pilot scale. And so a lot of what I did revolved around essentially the nutrition of cells. So making sure that the cell culture was healthy, producing the right amount of protein. And we did that by monitoring inputs and also like byproducts, which interestingly enough, like we, are kind of the same as human beings. So I always joke, I sort of concerned myself with the nutrition of cells before I started working with humans, and cells are way more compliant than human beings and easier to deal with. So I did that up until 2016, took a year off, started dabbling with, I would say, like my own nutrition around 2014 or so, because I was competing at that time in Olympic weightlifting. And so I was doing the whole weight class, weight cutting, song and dance, and then kind of made a decision to stop doing that and shift towards more performance eating with CrossFit. And so I just used myself as kind of I did a lot of experimenting with my own nutrition, and then sort of started helping people around the 2015, 2016 timeframe, and then became a full-time, or not full-time, but started coaching as a main endeavor in 2017, nutrition. Worked for another company, M2 Performance, for a couple of years, and then switched. We found a Tactic in 2018. And the reason why we sort of spun off of M2 at that time was partially because we were gaining so many of our own followers and our own clients just because of who we were. I was coming off of the games, so I had a lot of attention on me for a few different reasons. Alex had been to the games, so she was already really well known in the space. And we just kind of wanted to control the trajectory of our own business and the audience that we got into. Our mission with Tactic was always to be more than a performance nutrition company. Even though we definitely started, so I would say solidly as a performance nutrition company, because we were athletes ourselves. I think a lot of athletes wanted to work with us, and we still work with a number of CrossFit Games athletes, high-level endurance athletes, Olympic athletes. It's not to say that we don't work with athletes, but we find just as much value and satisfaction, I think, working with normal folks and people who are just trying to be a healthier version of themselves. And nutrition has, for an athlete, it makes a difference. It's like one of those things that starts to make, a 1% difference. It can give you an edge. Someone who's not an athlete, who is trying to come off of diet culture, who, just struggles, nutrition can be huge. I mean, it can really just revolutionize their whole life. And so we knew we wanted to take that direction. And so that's kind of been our mission with Tactics since 2018. And the growth has been good. It's been pretty slow up until recently. And yeah, I guess that's kind of it.
Good things take time to occur, right?
They do. Yes.
And I feel like your guys' content exemplifies that to the best. Every single day, you both are posting almost conversational content. And I wanted to actually start this podcast by congratulating you both. Less than 2 weeks, you are spreading love across all of Fernie. I actually have my heart shirt on today, just because it
amazing.
was such a nice opportunity to congratulate you too. But Alex, I'd love to hear from you as well, because I think you've got an incredible story, and I'd love to give some background knowledge for our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. So my athletic background was pretty diverse. I dabbled in pretty much every sport, very athletic, and just I was just in love with being active. But my parents, they really instilled in me the value of academics like early on. And so while I was managing all my athletics, I really kept up with academics. So focusing mostly on ski racing and golf, definitely more of like an individual sport athlete. And with those sports, while you can do them in different seasons, they start to overlap when you get older. So for skiing, you're traveling in the summertime and trying to make the most of the off season. And it's very similar with golf. Like if it's not summer in Canada, you're traveling to go play golf in other areas. And so I kind of had to pick one or the other. And that's when I really focused on ski racing and was a part of the national development team for 1 year. I was on the Alberta team, which is the provincial ski team, and then the Canadian team. And at that point, I spent a year just skiing full time and like didn't really like it. I felt like there was an immense amount of pressure. I felt like all my eggs are in one basket. I was worried about missing out on university, and like I didn't want to put my academics on hold. And at that point, I was really lucky. Ski racing was kind of becoming one of the bigger, and by bigger, I mean it was becoming an option to go NCAA. And I had a number of schools offering me a scholarship. So I ended up going to University of Alaska, Anchorage, and was on a full-time scholarship for 4 years. And then I studied psychology and philosophy with the plan of being a sports psychologist. And at that point in time, so I think we're looking at 12, 14 years ago. I'm so old now. Like sports psychology just wasn't a big field back then. And I was looking at the options with a psychology degree. There's not that many. It's like you have to go get your master's, your PhD, and then it's like you either become a therapist or a professor, or you pave your own way. And I'm just not that type of person to pave my own way. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to law school. Both my parents are lawyers, so it seemed like a good option. And I picked up CrossFit right at the tail end of my ski racing career. And I fell in love with it instantly. It was like exactly what I needed to transition away from elite athletics into something that was also elite athletics. And then I spent a year just doing CrossFit. I had a couple of deaths in my family. And so I really had to kind of deal with those. So I was at home for a year. And then I went to law school and was basically doing CrossFit part-time. At that point in time, around 2014, 15, it just wasn't as competitive. So I ended up making it to the games. And then when I became a lawyer, realized that being a lawyer takes up all of your time. And I couldn't really balance academics and athletics anymore, which was not the lifestyle I want for myself. Right. A lot of lawyers, and I speak kind of generally here, a lot of lawyers, they like live to work. There's not like a work to live mentality by any means, at least where I was. And at that point I had met Meredith, and she was working as a nutrition coach. And just with my athletic history, and just coming from a family that valued health and wellness and activity, I knew the importance of nutrition, was interested in it. And so just kind of dove right into that so that I could do what Meredith was doing. And then Tactic was kind of born. I basically canceled my law career and dove into this, and I haven't looked back, not once.
I love hearing this story because the two of you seem to have an incredible dynamic together, whether it's watching your Instagram content or just looking at the fact that, Meredith, you've got a scientific approach to performance and nutrition, and Alex, you're bringing this high level of sport and knowledge to the table. Do you ever have discomfort or any times where you're like don't get along? Because it seems like everything's hunky-dory and great times over there, but I'm sure there might not be all the time.
Isn't that great about the internet?
We've been through a lot of bumps, and yeah, we've grown a lot together and separately. Even before we had Tactic, I struggled a lot with having someone like move into my life. That was a struggle. Like, just especially somebody moving across the country to be with you, that's nerve-wracking. I think like long distance relationships are really hard, but it's really hard when someone like uproots their life to be with you. That's a lot of pressure. And then I was kind of the big fish in the pond in Calgary in Western Canada in terms of my like CrossFit, and Meredith shows up and she's better than me, and she was better than me. I think on paper she hadn't been to the games yet, but she would beat me in workouts and many of them. And to me, that was, it was hard for me to manage. Like to love this person and want to be with this person, but I felt like I was in competition with her. Mm-hmm. And that was a struggle. And I think Tactic almost helped change that dynamic. It made me feel like we were on a team together rather than against one another. And I think that was a healthy shift for us outside of CrossFit, because we did compete against each other very closely in the last couple of years of CrossFit. And then once we kind of moved out of that, we focused a lot on Tactic. And then there was a whole period of time where we had to figure out our roles within Tactic. It was a lot of let's do everything together. And then we realized we have very different strengths. So we discovered divide and conquer, which is much more productive. And now we're just utilizing our strengths to the best of our abilities. And I think that's kind of been the game changer for us.
Meredith,
but yeah, we argue a lot.
Meredith, did you feel the same way? Were you coming in and being like the big fish now, or were you trying to be casual?
Like if I had to, like, our personalities are so different. I'm just kind of I would say more a calmer person, just like baseline. I don't really struggle with anxiety. It takes a lot to sort of get me like fussed. And so I was like, oh, it's going to be great. We're going to hang out together in Calgary. We get to work out together. Like at no point really beyond, like, I think what's a normal level of feeling competitiveness was I like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Like, I don't want Alex to be like, it was not a source of stress to me. And maybe that is because I was coming in and I was just at a, no offense, like slightly higher level with CrossFit. Like there was some things that Alex would still beat me in, but I felt very confident in my abilities. And so, and it's also like, I'm just not one of those people who, when another person is having success, I don't feel as though that is really taking a lot away from me. I think that's just kind of I live inherently with some growth mindset rather than a little bit of scarcity mindset, which Alex would probably tell you that she does deal with. So I didn't feel a lot of those things. There were some other sticking points, I think, in our, especially with Tactic early on with delegation, but we, like Alex said, worked through that period of time, and now we delegate and kind of focus on where our strengths lie in our business and our relationship.
I love hearing that. And you brought up a really good point, and I think it fits well with your focus on the fundamentals of nutrition and not the fads. And yeah. I'd love for you both to maybe dive into that, how you brought your previous experiences to the table and then allowed to almost flourish it with Tactic.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll start. Like, my experience, I think, is rooted in science. Like, fundamentally, I'm a scientist, and I always will be. So I consider things pretty objectively, and just understanding how the scientific method applies in life and in nutrition, and understanding how much evidence has to go into a theory before it becomes like, yes, this is how something works. I would say I'm like inherently skeptical of fads or things that just don't have a large body of research. It's like, those things are curiosities to me. Like, oh, I would like to learn more about this to understand where this hypothesis is coming from. But I'm always shocked at how willing people are to make decisions and make moves and change their lifestyles based on really just a hypothesis and, like, an abstract from a paper or a very, very small body of evidence, when they haven't even, given what has been scientifically proven, a a try, which is just really basic stuff, right? So, I mean, we like from a thermodynamic standpoint, like humans are not immune to the laws of thermodynamics, and we're really just like, you put energy in, you get energy out. If those things are in balance, then your body weight doesn't change, or you build muscle, or you lose body fat. Like these things are known. And there's a lot of things that can impact a person's ability to do those two things, to either maintain weight or change body composition or lose body fat. That's not to say that it isn't a complicated problem for some people. But there's this narrative out there that it's not calories, or, it's what you eat, not how much. It's the time that you eat. It's your specific fasting window. And when you actually consider that logically, it makes sense why those things are taking off, because I think humans are naturally, when I say people, humans, when you put them in a large group, they're naturally quite reductionist. Like we have a hard time collectively understanding that most of the problems that we experience are rather complex. And so in order to solve, like, it's just like there's a gap in our understanding and in our psyche. And so in order to solve and close that gap, we kind of can buy into very simple explanations. And that's why people like really simple explanations, is because like, well, I don't understand this. There's a gap in my understanding, but that makes sense. So I'm just going to go with that, even though the scientists and, people who actually know what they're talking about either are like, no, that's absolutely incorrect. Or what they would probably say is like, there's not enough data to support that approach generally.
So you mean I shouldn't just eat meat and go on the carnivore diet?
Yeah, I mean, you can, but yeah, you can enjoy your scurvy later on.
I just remember you bringing that up.
Bleeding.
Yeah, I remember a previous combo, one of your podcasts. I was like, this is just gold, because a lot of individuals, I'll say, will fall victim to the fact that, hey, I lost 30 pounds. I look incredible. I'm getting these tremendous results. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe for a month or two, but what's going to happen 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road when you don't have those essential vitamins and nutrients?
Right.
Alex, what about you? I'm curious. You also brought up that train to eat versus eat to train, going back to your work to live. And I think that's a really good point. I'd love for you to dive deeper on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, more specifically, there is, and I think a lot of athletes, and especially young athletes, can succumb to that line of thinking. It's definitely popular in diet culture, where activity and exercise is used as a reason to eat, or you get to eat because you've exercised and that sort of thing. That's certainly like, it's not a good mindset to be in. And it's not really the case. You don't really burn, unless you're, running a marathon every day or training like a CrossFit Games athlete. You don't actually burn that many calories in training, or workouts, I guess I should say. If you are a young athlete or an athlete, then maybe you do burn a lot. But for most people who are just active, it's not the case. You don't train to eat. You eat to train. You eat, and nutrition is foundational. You eat to live. You eat to be vital. You eat to fuel your brain. You eat to be able to sleep properly. You eat to recover. Like, eating food, nutrition, is the foundation for life. And more so with athletes, more so with active people, more so with people who really value their health and wellness. And I think that's the way I kind of view work. And you should enjoy what you do for work. You should enjoy what you eat. You should feel confident in your choices, and it should bring you fulfillment, just like with your job. But I personally, and I don't speak for others, I personally didn't want work or want my nutrition to be this thing that just is taking over my life. I want it to be the foundation that I can use it to jump off of, that I can, use it to make enough money so that I can live the life I want to live, to go on vacation, to be free from financial stress, that sort of thing. But you also want to love it and feel confident in what you're doing. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's, I guess, just goes back to the foundational approach that we take with nutrition and work and all those things that kind of are huge parts of life, but shouldn't really be a source of stress, I guess I should say.
Absolutely. And I think you two have done a really good job. Your whole team has done an incredible job of spreading that message, and hopefully it's getting to more people. Obviously it is. You seeing that incredible growth recently. Now I'm curious, your focus is macro based, morning logging. It's not an extreme 10 out of 10 diet culture, got to go chicken, rice, broccoli 6 days, like never stopping. It's more of a, hey, let's just try and incorporate a healthy lifestyle, eat in moderation, log your food, be aware of what you're putting into your body. Am I on the right track? Is there anything the two of you would like to add to that?
No, I mean, that's basically it. Like it sounds ridiculous that it's that simple. And really we are a macros based program predominantly. We work with a number of people with not tracking macros. It's not certainly not the only tool available, but it's a really useful tool. I think a lot of folks have never really quantified any part of their diet. And so can be quite eye-opening for people to see where their calories come from. And then, we do like to use it more as a planning tool rather than, strict quantification, trying to hit specific numbers for specific reasons. Like there's a time and a place to do that for sure. But really, the most of our clients just will have success just by putting some attention on food, planning, getting within the ballpark on calories and macros consistently. And if you can get someone to do that, it's like getting someone who's never paid attention to the way that they spend money to look at their bank account every day. And it's like just doing that, just putting your eyes on your bank account, on your credit card statement, just doing that will immediately change the way that you think and live with money. And it's the same thing with food.
Super interesting. I love it. It's refreshing to hear because I will be the occasional Instagram scroller and I'll see all these different facts and fads. And I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I should try this. Look at this, what this guy's doing. And it's like, it's information overload. And I think getting back to the basics is so needed. Aaron Jeffrey, who we had on last week, who is a number 6 ranked Bellator fighter, said the exact same thing. He's a nutritionist as well. He's got the same protocol. It's eat, sleep, train, put good food in your body, and make sure you're resting and recovering properly. So obviously there's a theme here to the high performers in the room, but I'm curious for the two of you, with the experience you have in the CrossFit Games, what was it like competing in the games? Any highlights, lowlights, things you want to share for potential CrossFit athletes moving forward that are aspiring to be in the games?
I'll take this one. The CrossFit Games was, and I've done a lot of athletic events, and the CrossFit Games was by far, and I remember saying this immediately after, it was the best athletic experience of my entire life.
Wow.
It was, for me, not that hard to qualify. It just kind of happened. I was just trying to get good at CrossFit. I was close to making it many times. Leading up 2013 and 14, I was a couple points away. And then 2015, I just got in, and I kind of got lucky with the events at regionals. I didn't have any pressure going into the games. I had no expectations. I was there to perform to the best of my capabilities, train as hard as I could. And I was there, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Like I did have some ups and downs for sure. It was the community. I think at that point in time, I was still somewhat new to CrossFit, like 3 or 4 years in, and I had been to the games before, and even just spectating the games, if you've ever spectated, it is really cool. And I think part of that is the community. It's not like, everyone in the stands does CrossFit, and it's inclusive. And so you can be out on the field or in the stands, and you know what it's like to some degree. Like, of course it varies by degree, and there's just that community, and all the freak swag you get, and you just get treated like a celebrity. And even within the sport, there's so many friendships were made. I mean, Meredith and I when we were doing invites for our wedding, we're like, oh, we have so many friends in CrossFit, but everyone is it's all like all over the world. We have friends from this sport. So yeah, I mean, it's hard now. It's so much more competitive. And I worry a little bit when I say it was the best experience of my life, because I see so many people putting their lives on hold to try to get to the CrossFit Games. And I think that's a shame, to be honest. I think there's so many people who aren't going to make it, and they're spending so much time and putting all their eggs in that basket. And I worry about those people. I don't want to sound like I'm on a high horse. Like, I qualified for the games when I was going to law school. Like, it didn't come at a cost to me. It was a bonus. And I just, now where the sport is, it's really hard to do that. You just don't see it anymore. And yeah, so I guess it was the best, but I do qualify that a little bit. Like, it just didn't come at as much of a cost as it does for some of the athletes today, especially the fringe athletes. And I think Meredith has a little bit more experience with that, 'cause she went a few years later than me. But
yeah, 2018 was a hard year. I qualified out of the Super West region, 5th place, so solidly bubble. Well, technically 6th, but then backfilled to 5th. And that was a hard push, and I had been really kind of pushing for that, because the deal with me was I took a year and a half off of my job to play professional CrossFit with the intention of going back to my job. Like, it was never going to be what I did full time. It was just, I wanted to see what I could do. And I had met some standards that I set out for myself and said, basically, if I can, come solidly top 10 at regionals, then I'll consider taking some time off and seeing what I can do. But always was planning on going back. Obviously I didn't go back, but things changed. And it's a great experience for sure. It's really difficult. 2018 was one of the hardest years I think that has ever been programmed at the games. 2015 was tough because of, full sun Murph, but
I've never been more sore in my entire life.
Yeah. We had
after the first day.
Right. We had the marathon row, the CrossFit total, 30 muscle ups per time, and a criterion on the first day. So it was a lot, but it was a great experience. I will say, I'm a kind of a fan of the cuts, because even for me, I finished 30th, which was not like a stellar performance. But I had a good time. But even on the last day, I was like, I'm getting like really tired. And it was very much like, I'm kind of ready to be done with this, even though the experience was really good. So I like that they cut the field now. I thought what they did this year was really good. And I will say, better than the CrossFit Games, I think demo team was really fun. And when we went in 2019, that's probably one of my highlights from my CrossFit career, was being able to demo and help develop the workouts for 2019.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. There's 2 points I want to bring up from there. Alex, you mentioned the pro athlete. It's difficult to get there now. I mean, isn't it difficult to become a pro athlete in any sport to some degree? And like that 0.01%, I'm thinking, if someone's going to be trying to pursue this, well, let's give it to them, let it go. And then the second point, Meredith, because you smiled as soon as she said it, was the community piece. I'd love for you to share that after as well, because, but Alex, first off, let's clarify. I'm getting ahead of myself. That piece on pro athletes. I know one of the things you guys have mentioned before was that number one predictor to be a pro athlete is that they've played a number of sports before they become a professional. Is there maybe a correlation between training CrossFit afterwards to continue that athletic pursuit, maybe not in their original sport?
I think originally, yes. I think now when you're seeing these teenagers who've been doing CrossFit for longer than the adults, people are like, oh, these teenagers are coming out of nowhere. And, wow, it's amazing. I'm like, it's actually not. They've been doing CrossFit longer than some of these like CrossFit Games athletes. Like legitimately, some of them have been doing it since they're 8 and they're 18. Like that's 10 years. But to my point with a pro athlete, like in another sport, if you turn pro, you instantly get a paycheck. And I want to qualify that. I know I have friends who ski race and their paychecks aren't great. They're pros, they're on the World Cup, they're traveling, it's their full-time job, and their paychecks aren't great. They're scrambling to get sponsorships. But at least it's a recognized sport. At least they're going to probably, on track to go to the Olympics. That's something that's recognized on a resume. CrossFit's not. People still don't know what CrossFit is. If you make it to the games, like if you're like me or Meredith and you make it to the games, you come 30th, you don't get anything from that. Like if you look a certain way, especially as a female, and if you hold yourself out a certain way, specifically on Instagram, yeah, you can get followers and use that. But if you spend 5 years of your life training in a gym to get to the CrossFit Games and you get 35th, or you don't, or maybe you're just a regionals athlete. Guess what? Like, nothing comes from that. Maybe you're attractive enough to get, and I'm sorry, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole or be super negative, but maybe you have 300,000 followers on Instagram and you're making money off sponsors because you're at that point an influencer. But CrossFit's not like other sports, in my opinion. It's not that lucrative. It doesn't really look good on a resume. It doesn't set you up for something else. It's tough right now for those athletes. Like, it really is tough for them. It's, turning pro, it's not like you get carded or you get a contract. It's a privatized organization. Like, I don't know. And then the rules are constantly changing too. So yeah. I don't know. There's several factors to consider. And I guess I should have maybe qualify what I said before about it, but those are some of the things I think about when I see athletes just like grinding themselves to dust every single day inside a dungy gym. For what, really? And I do think a lot of it's because they love it and it's for that end goal. So yeah, I can't take that away from them. Yeah.
Right. It's almost being careful of it, being a passion compared to just going at the sport and trying to be the best possible. Right. And like, you can develop a lot of great habits that come from CrossFit and the functional movements that are associated with it, squatting, deadlifting, like doing these functional lifts that are going to benefit your body outside of just CrossFit. Meredith, I want you to touch on the community piece first before I ask my heater of a question.
Oh, totally. Yeah. CrossFit is a sport that was born from the community. Like, it's where, back in sectionals days, back in like 2011, like that was based on your region. And then, the open was always region based. Regionals were obviously region based. And I have really fond memories. The first time I went to regionals was 2015. And, basically my whole gym, because I wasn't the only one who went from my gym, but the whole gym packed up and drove to Atlanta. And that was every single gym that had an athlete. Like, that's just what people did back in those days. And even like, an athlete goes to the games, the whole gym packs up and goes to California. And there was such a tangible, like, communal feel to it. And these athletes were being born from those communities. They were coming from affiliates. They were, my story is that I walked into an affiliate in 2012. I was not, remarkable in any way, but I could work hard. And that's all I did for years was I worked hard and I set goals and I achieved them. And that's how I got to that level. And that was many people's stories. They showed up in affiliate just to do some CrossFit classes. And then the owner, was like, hey, you're kind of good. Like, you should sign up for the open. And, there were people who would literally do the open for the first year and go to the games. Like, that used to happen. That was like 2015. I knew someone who did that. 2018, someone did that in the West region. And, so I have really fond memories of that era of CrossFit, and part of me likes to see the growth of the sport because I see, okay, there are more income opportunities for athletes. And that's, I think, a good thing, but I feel like it's all these athletes who, a lot of them train at home, or they train only in open gym, or they come in to do the sport only. They've never even done a CrossFit affiliate class. Like, they don't come from that background. And so to me, the communal feeling of CrossFit, it might be becoming more global. Like, maybe that's what we can agree on, is that it's becoming a more global community. But for me, I miss the feeling of like kind of the grassroots athletes who are coming from actual gyms, who have like, packs of supporters who are just people that they take class with, who are like, yeah, let's go watch regionals. It's like I think those were really the glory days, and we'll see how the sport progresses. I don't see it ever going back there. And, maybe it just becomes like a major league type situation where there's no real connection to the athletes other than, oh, I'm a fan of, whoever, Justin Medeiros or, Haley, whoever you're a fan of. And that's the extent of the connection.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just love the way both of you articulate your thoughts. It's calm, cool, collected. It's awesome. I really appreciate it. And Alex, I want to point out the fact that you're not being negative when you talk about that. You're just looking out for these athletes. That's what we're doing here on the Athletes Podcast. It's educating, entertaining, and inspiring them. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we share real stories like the two of you are doing. So I appreciate both of you for doing that. And without further ado, how do you deal with the CrossFit hate?
Oh, geez. Like people hating on CrossFit or?
Yeah, there's people who have a negative connotation with CrossFit because of the grind, don't stop, hard work, AMRAP, like, and there's something to be said for maybe people who are not in the best shape going right in and trying to do a Murph, 30 days in a row or whatever the case may be. So I want to caveat by saying, I'm aware of that, but how do you manage and like articulate in such a great way that CrossFit can be a very beneficial movement and activity to do on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is you have to realize that there are people who are just going to be negative about everything. Like it's like they live to be negative. And so CrossFit's the perfect target because there's like, it's so, it's like culty in the best way. Like there's just, it's such an easy target for people who want to be negative about it. And they're like, oh, it's too intense. The injury rate's too high. Never mind the fact that, they've now published papers and they redacted that one paper about the injury rate being what it is. And when you compare CrossFit to a sport like downhill skiing, for example, like the injury rate is actually quite low. And you have to be okay with people like having some agency and autonomy in what they choose to do for fitness. And if CrossFit is it, then that's it. The complaint about like, oh, it's too intense for new people. Well, look, like no one is walking off the street and doing CrossFit. Like if someone walks into a gym and they're like, look, I haven't worked out in 15 years. Can I do CrossFit? Like number one, the answer should always be yes. If you're a gym owner or a coach, it's like, hey, do you have your shoes? Awesome. Sign this waiver. I can coach you through a workout. Like a good coach is able to do that. And number two, that person is just exercising. Like just call it what it is. They're not doing CrossFit. They're doing like push-ups on a wall. They're doing box step-ups on like 2 of those green risers. Like they're just exercising. And that's all it is for a long time. Like, I don't know at what point you get to call it CrossFit. Like CrossFit is they did a great job with marketing. They kind of like patented the burpee and the thruster, but those movements have been around forever. They just combine them in different ways, and they blast loud music with cuss words and they call it CrossFit. And so that's like people, and that's the value of a good coach too, is I think people, coaches can help regulate the intensity a little bit, but like legitimately beginners are not even capable of the type of intensity that can hurt them. Like what you need to be concerned with is like, are they moving safely? Great. Nothing to worry about. I do think like there's some research, especially for older folks, especially for older women, that like HIIT, like high intensity interval training, CrossFit style training may not be the best for progress or health. But, again, a lot of people like to say, I do HIIT. And the reality is if you're doing high intensity interval training properly, you can probably only do it like once a week max. Like if you're doing HIIT more than once a week, you are just doing interval training and it is not high intensity.
Look at that. I asked one question, I get a couple answers. I love it. That's awesome. Okay. You guys are basically the opposite of bridezillas. We've clarified that. Any like nervous moments a couple weeks away of this wedding, and how does it impact your training, your coaching, your job ultimately? I know this is a stressful situation. I'm curious how you two are managing it.
It's like one more thing. It's hard to juggle with the way that work has been. Like work is busy, which is, I mean, in the best way possible. Like we are so happy. Timing is a little bit odd. It's hard. Thankfully, we are going into this wedding kind of as minimalists. We just really want it to be basic and intimate. We are having about 50 or 60 people. So we're not having like this huge thing. And it's in Fernie, which is kind of small town. So it makes it a little bit less intense. I'm going to use that word. There's still a lot to do, like to just get the wedding, a lot of people to coordinate. I don't think anything nervous, more just excitement to kind of have the day and then have this whole thing behind us
with this whole thing.
It's just a lot. All these extra, there's like planning weddings. It's a lot of work. And I say this because, and Meredith is probably doing most of it.
Well, Alex's line, she keeps saying this, it's infuriating. This has been her line for the last couple of weeks. She's like, don't worry, it will just come together. And like, as the person who's doing most of the planning and the coordinating and the communicating with vendors, and Alex is kind of like,
I'm doing the planning too. You're doing the communicating.
It's just kind of no, it's not going to just come together. Like, we are going to make it come together. Like, things don't just come together.
But I do feel like things are going to come together. Like, decisions are going to be forced on us in the moment. There's no need to like do it ahead of time when we don't know for sure. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so you're telling me you don't want to spend $3,000 on flowers?
No. You actually had to fire.
Like, oh, the flower lady hasn't gotten back to me. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, we ended up ditching our
shoot.
It was like 3 weeks out and I still didn't have a florist contract. I was like, I have no idea what she's going to try to charge us. She's horrible at communicating. So I was like, look, like I sent her an email and I was like, we can't do this. I got like, my sister agreed to do flowers. We opened a wholesale flower account. It's going to be like $500 and I can deal with that.
That's manageable.
Still too much in my opinion.
Yeah.
But whatever.
They're expensive, it's part of culture, weddings, celebrating love. It is what it is,
Yeah.
Part of the process. Okay, let's go back to the basics here. If I was to ask the two of you, what should the average person be doing to make a significant change on their health, well-being, lifestyle? If there was maybe a list of 5 things that everyone should just, be aware of, cognizant of, or trying to implement in their daily lives, is there 5 things that the two of you can think of off the top of your head?
I think the number one, we can probably both agree on this because it impacts so much else with nutrition and lifestyle.
Can we do like a 1, 2, 3, say it?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3, planning.
Sleep.
Oh.
Awkward.
Sleep makes sleep. It's just like there. It's yeah. If you wake up and you're well slept, like decision making is easier.
It is quite foundational.
You feel better. You get more out of your workouts. You aren't on edge. It impacts your brain chemistry, which is huge. And that's to go to planning.
Yeah. I mean, and then the second thing, let's just say like, if you're well slept and you wake up, you're going to have a hell of a lot of an easier time, like planning, which I think is, and I sort of go back and forth on the sleep planning thing. Cause I think if you plan well, then you open up a lot of time for sleep, but sleep's complicated because people just refuse to get a routine going.
Or they struggle with it for other reasons.
Yeah. But I would say like from a pure like nutrition fitness standpoint, like just planning, just more thought and preparation. And I don't mean like meal prep. I just mean like understanding what food options are for the day, like not getting to lunch and realizing that you don't have any food,
or protein.
Which is, yeah, exactly. Which is, and protein would be probably my number 3, which is just, you have to put attention on protein. That's when we start with someone who isn't an athlete or like is relatively new to nutrition, like no one comes close to hitting protein. It's so hard. And like, it makes sense, right? Like it's expensive. It's not portable. Like you have to refrigerate it or cook it. It's like literally difficult to eat. Like you have to chew it a lot. So it's just not one that people tend to go for. Like I think the standard breakdown for macros in an unmanaged Western diet is like, maybe 40% carbs, 40% fat, 20% protein, which is not good. That's not good. And you can see how like with that breakdown, so if you're looking at that pie chart, if your portion sizes go up or down at all, that has a massive impact on calories versus if you just make the protein part of that pie chart bigger, your portion sizes can go up and down. It doesn't have as big of an impact on calories because your fat intake is going to be lower. So I'd say protein is probably number 3. What about number 4?
Probably resistance training or any activity. I mean, I think the lowest hanging fruit is activity. Yeah. If we had to tell somebody which activity they should do, it's strength training, or some sort of resistance training. And then the last one,
I would say the last one would be self-awareness. Just developing some practice of being self-aware, of noticing things, noticing your behavior, like noticing what's good, noticing what's bad. And that transcends like fitness and nutrition. That's just like a good practice to have generally, but that really it gives you the ability to look back on, when you get to the end of the week and you're like, that was a kick-ass week. And you can look back and assess why that was. Or you get to the end of the week and you say, that week was not a good week. And you can look back and assess why that was, rather than projecting that feeling of this was not a good week on everything and everybody in your life, which is problematic. And it happens all the time.
Yeah, I love that self-awareness piece. That's such a unique fifth point to bring up. And I think it's so crucial, and more people should be doing it. Okay, you talked about nighttime routine and sleep. I'm tossing on my blue light blockers an hour before I go to bed. I'm trying to drink some green tea, decaf. Don't worry, I'm not caffeinating before bed. Anything else I should be doing to make sure that this routine is, optimized, and I'm ensuring I get the best 8 hours possible, so that I'm getting my REM sleep in and ensuring that I'm rested and recovered so I can make good decisions to plan for my next day?
Yeah, I would say your bedtime routine actually begins as soon as you wake up. Like that's number one. And so when we're talking about bedtime routine, really what we're dabbling in is like some like chronobehavioral, like chronobiology, circadian rhythm type science. And the strongest signal that we have is sunlight. And that it doesn't matter if it's like full sun, if it's cloudy. The best thing that you can do just to like jumpstart
is to go camping.
Actually, yeah.
Like go camping and just like be outside when the light is go to sleep when it's dark. You'll naturally go to sleep when it's dark because you're not exposed to these other artificial lights, and you'll be awake, and you'll come out of your tent and you'll wake up when it's bright out, and then your circadian clock and that's proven. You can actually like reset your clock by going camping. So I guess to hijack Meredith's explanation in short form, mimic camping. When you wake up, get outside. Try to get as much sunlight as you can, especially right when you wake up. It's helpful to get it right when the sun's going down. And then when it's dark out, make sure it's cold and dark and go to sleep.
Yeah. Turn off screens. If you find you're someone who lulls in the afternoon, getting morning sunlight and combining that with delaying your first cup of coffee for around 90 minutes, that can have a really positive impact because that starts to impact cortisol too, right? Mm-hmm. And so that has a really positive impact on cortisol, and it can sort of level you out in the afternoon. If you find you're one of those people who gets like 2 or 3 and you're about to pass out because you're so tired, just don't drink coffee right in the morning or first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Or unplug your TV or throw your TV in the garbage. Or don't go on TikTok and delete Instagram.
But don't delete Instagram because then you can't follow us.
Yeah. All of those things that I think there's all these tips and tricks. It's like, have melatonin, which again, not the best, but we won't get into that. Or, blue light blockers, brushing your teeth, getting morning sunlight. But really, I think it comes down a lot to like the behavioral thing, like not getting off your phone is a really bad one for people, or staying up and binge watching something on TV, one more episode, or, my wife doesn't get home till 8 and I like to have time with her at nighttime.
Screw your wife.
Yeah. No, that's like a very long-winded answer, but I think, just go to bed. For some people, it's as simple as that.
Did you learn this while you were in Alaska? You were just like, all these lights coming in. You're like, oh
man, Alaska, that was brutal. That was brutal. In the winter, there's like the sun doesn't even go above the horizon on some days. We wouldn't be on the ski hill till like 10 or 11 because it was so dark for a period of time. That just goes to show like people up there, they're really impacted by that lack of sunlight. They get the seasonal affective disorder. It's very predominant up there. And what we're doing in other parts of the world, we're basically inside, especially in the wintertime for so much of the day, just exposing ourselves to artificial light. Like, no wonder there's so many mental health problems out there. And again, many factors, but that sort of thing, like not getting outside, not getting natural sunlight is a really big, can really impact your mental health and your brain chemicals and your sleep, which it all just kind of compounds.
Yeah. So throw out the TV, turn off TikTok, Instagram, only follow Tactic Nutrition on the
Yeah.
website so that you
Sell
can see
your
it on your
house,
desktop.
buy a tent.
Exactly.
Desktop, you like battery it up. Okay, we're good. Okay, we got that sorted. Alex and Meredith, I feel like we could chat for hours about this. Athletes, health, nutrition, wellness. Is there anything specific you would like to leave our guests, our listeners with? The way we wrap up every episode is we ask our guests what their biggest piece of advice would be for the next generation of athletes. And I'd love for each of you to provide maybe your own biggest piece of advice, because, you know, we got you here. We'd love to hear it.
My biggest piece of advice, and this is something that I experienced in 2018, I would say leading up to that year, I had kind of stopped having fun with CrossFit. It became so serious. I was so dead set on like making the CrossFit games, being as competitive and as good as I possibly could, that I think it actually hindered my ability to perform. It got me injured. And then in 2018, I think sort of because I just added a bunch of new stuff to my life. Like I moved to a new city, obviously in a relationship with Alex. I was in a new community. I was in the mountains, which never hurts. I was just having more fun, and I was having more fun in training. And it was something that I was enjoying again. And it's, you know, there's that Mia Hamm quote, and I'm going to screw it up. But it's something about like, remember that, you know, there's inside the athlete is the little girl who, you know, started playing because she loves the game or something like that. And I think that's important as an athlete, is you have to remember why you started and why you do it. And it is because it is fun to do. No matter what sport you play, like you probably started playing it because you're like, man, this is fun. And so I guess that would be my recommendation. Like if you're a CrossFit athlete, jump into some group classes, like have fun with your fitness. That's why you do it. That's why you have it. Get outside, ride a bike, like just do something where you're like, this is fun. I'm an athlete and I'm having fun. And that can be quite motivating and rejuvenating if you're kind of slaving away at your craft.
Mm-hmm. That's a great one. I think mine would probably be, and this is such a parent thing to say, is like, get an education.
Okay.
It's
short and sweet.
I just, there's so much value in having an education. It's like, you can do both. You can have both. And it's just like I don't like using the word like fallback, but you know, you could get injured. You know, it's not a shoe-in if you want to make it as a pro athlete. It's so competitive, and having that in your back pocket, and it helps you grow as a person. And it does help kind of take the pressure off what you're doing. It allows you to kind of dabble in other things and have different focuses, which allows for balance, and balance is good for everybody.
I love that. Well, we were able to do both today. I was able to learn a ton from both of you, and we had a lot of fun over the past hour. Meredith Root, Alex Parker, I sincerely appreciate both of your time here coming on the Athletes Podcast. Where can people find you on social media before they throw away all their electronics so that you can get that extra couple followers?
Before you throw away your phone and go live off the grid, you can find us. Our main account is at Tactic Nutrition. Is the one with a lot of followers. Our personal accounts, which have fewer followers, are at Meredith_Root and at AA Parker 1. And you can find us online at tacticmethod.com.
Thank you so much. Amazing. Really appreciate it.